Please give a warm welcome to writer, producer, director, Rian Johnson.
It's too kind. Thank you guys so much.
Welcome back, Rian. This is like the fourth time you've been here.
I love this theater. I'm always so happy to come up here, and thank you guys for that, and thank you for being here. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're huge fans, and actually going to start talking about one aspect of your films that I think that is your secret weapon, and is your brother and his score.
Oh, yeah, he's like a brother, but my cousin. Yeah. But we're basically brothers. Yeah, at this point.
The score is so incredible. In particular, this one, I was really taken by the light and the darkness in the score and the unconventional sounds that he makes. You know, tell us about working with him and this particular score.
Yeah, I mean, we've been, like I said, he's my cousin. We've been making movies together since we were 10 years old. He's scored every movie I've ever done, except the Star Wars movie I made, which we let this kid named Johnny Williams take a shot at that one.
Yeah.
But for this one, it's really fun with Nathan, because I think having obviously like a decades-long collaboration, I think sometimes a director kind of hires a composer based on, well, the movie feels like this, so I'll get a composer who does this kind of thing. Yes. And with Nathan and I, we've just been making movies together our whole lives, and so I really feel like with Nathan, we can dive in and at least attempt anything different together. So with this, with the darker tone of it, he did some really interesting things. He went... We shot the movie in London, and he went into Air Studios, which is a big church, while we were still shooting. And he recorded all these strings and different instruments kind of just scraping their bows. And he recorded like the wind section just clattering the buttons on I don't know the terminology, but like the buttons on the horns to get this like sound.
Is that something you requested, or he just...
That's something that the conversations with the two of us, we talked about the tone of the film and how we're going to need some sequences that cause kind of an unsettling feeling in a way the other two movies didn't.
Yeah.
And so all based on the story, it all comes back to just
one thing that I noticed in the score was that in the past, in Glass Onion, he had motifs, themes for each character. Yeah. This time, did I miss? There was not.
No, there isn't. You're right. There's a couple very subtle things, like for the Eve's apple, the jewel, kind of, which is sort of like the Ring of Power and Lord of the Rings in this movie.
And Josh Brolin has a bit of a theme.
Yeah, he's got a bit of kind of like an unsettling thing. But even for the jewel, it's not like it's a melodic theme. It's the thing, Nathan did this thing where all of the string section started just like screeching their bows and then had that resolve into a pure tone, because he wanted to do something to evoke kind of from this kind of primal evil into this kind of pure clarity. So there's little things like that, but it's definitely not a Peter and the Wolf melodic theme score. Yeah,
it's a great score. Your other collaborator, Steve Yedlin. And in this work in particular, I was really intrigued with the usage of light. For example, in the first scene that Josh O'Connor and Daniel Craig, you see the debate between the light and the dark. You actually see it visually with the lighting. Tell us about your approach with Steve.
Yeah, so that was, the interior of the church was a set that we built that Rick Heinrich, our production designer, and his team built, and it was one of the most beautiful sets I've ever been on in my life. But that meant we had control over the light in there, and I had talked with Steve very early on about wanting to bring sort of the natural world outside into the space. I was a kid in Colorado where the clouds move very fast, and so you'll have the experience of being in a warm sunlit room, and then like that, it's like God turns out the lights and suddenly everything gets dark and cool. And the emotional effect that has on everyone inside the room is something you see in life a lot, but you don't see in movies very often. So we decided to go very theatrical with those changes. Steve pre-rigged all the lights and worked up this light control system so that on set we could, just from his laptop, basically play the lighting changes like we were playing music, and we could shape them to the scenes. And it's my favorite thing in the world when, like, a friend of mine sees the movie and comes up and says, "Oh my God, it must have been so magical when the timing worked out perfect, so the sun just came out." And I'm always like, yes, it was absolutely, that was a divine moment.
But you said that the lighting was rigged, but the cues were planned in advance, or like that scene with Josh O'Connor and Daniel Craig. You guys had discussed about having the dark and the light shown visually.
Yeah, I knew, for example, when Josh is kind of giving his response to Blanc, I knew I wanted the sun to kind of emerge behind him. Mm-hmm. But then the shape through the rest of the scene, that was what was nice. We could rehearse it with the scene with the actors and very organically feel out, okay, maybe it starts in a darker tone and then very subtly it gets brighter by this point. And we could kind of map that out on the day because we had the power to do that because Steve had done so much work in prep to get the system all set.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the theatricality, and that was actually one of my follow-up questions about your production designer, Rick Henricks.
Heinrich, yeah.
He is very theatrical. I was in particular struck with the scene in the woods, that you have this sense of depth that is very, like, you feel like I'm watching a play. Yeah. Tell us about the whole design.
Yeah, Rick is amazing. Besides being just a wonderful man, he's an incredible designer. Rick came up with Tim Burton. He designed a lot of Tim Burton's movies, and I've worked with him before on the Star Wars movie and also on Glass Onion. And I think Rick's particular genius is he's very good at creating very precise emotional effects through scale, through large-scale sets. So that's something he definitely brought to this. Yeah, all that stuff outdoors, that was in Winterfeld Forest in just outside of London, but it was so that was all actually outdoors, which gave us the benefit of being able to, we did some of it day for night so that we got that depth that you're talking about. And then our poor actors had to be in the rain in the middle of the night in the forest in England. But
it was unsettling.
It's movie making, yeah.
Yeah, because you set it up at first that we see that depth, and then later on we do.
It pays off, yeah.
It pays off.
Yeah.
Tell us about this whole Gothic feel that is completely different to the sunny Glass Onion and the preceding film. Yeah. It's dark, it's grounded.
Yeah, that was the intent. I mean, that's, Daniel and I thinking about these movies, part of the reason we're excited to keep making them is because we don't really think of them as a series where we kind of do the same thing one after another. I take inspiration from Agatha Christie, which is where this all comes from. And I think people who just casually know Christie's work sometimes have the mistaken perception that she wrote the same book over and over. And anyone who actually knows Christie, that's the opposite of the case. And she was endlessly restless in terms of exploring different subgenres, different structural things, different tones with each of her books. So the fact that there are so many things that a murder mystery can be and so many themes it can explore, in this one, I mean, that's where this one started, was the theme of the idea of faith is something that's very personal to me. I grew up very, very Christian, not just in a Christian household, but up through my mid-20s, I was just deeply personally Christian. It was a big part of who I was. And I'm not a believer anymore, and so it's something I have a lot of complicated feelings about. And the fact that you can use this wonderful, fun genre to create a movie that is, attempt to create a movie that's a big entertainment and is fun for audiences and also engages, can't just contain, but can engage with and help tell kind of a multifaceted conversation about something like faith. I mean, that to me is, I don't know, that's kind of why we do what we do.
Yeah, I was struck with that aspect when I was watching the film, that I don't recall a big budget entertaining film that actually deals with faith and religion.
It's kind of a third rail, yeah, a little bit. Probably rightly so.
And also, you do a fine dance between, you do tackle the subject in depth, but at the same time is entertaining. Were you concerned about not being too facile, but at the same time, going introspection?
I was deeply, deeply concerned with that. Yeah, that was kind of the danger of attempting this, and I mean that's why this was by far the hardest thing I've ever written, and it wasn't because of the mystery elements of it. It was because really trying to make this thing, like I said, something that actually talks about faith as opposed to at it, and that both doesn't feel like it's kind of toothless and trying to not offend anyone, but at the same time doesn't feel didactic or finger waggy in one direction or the other, but has an opinion, has a point of view. So, and that's the sort of thing, especially with this subject, if you get it wrong, it can really be insufferable. And so I think the reason I felt okay even attempting it was just because it comes from personal experience, because I have such a deeply rooted personal experience in the church. Every aspect of it is speaking from a slice of my own experience with it.
And why switch from Protestant to Catholic church?
Well, mostly because I grew up evangelical, and most of the churches I grew up going to kind of looked like pottery barns. And so you got to give it to Catholicism. They've got the theatrics down pat, man. They got like nothing beats the Catholic Church in terms of if you're making a movie about the storytelling power of religion, you got to go Catholicism or bust, I think. Yeah, but also because I felt like I was speaking. I think giving it, for me, a little bit of distance of setting in the world of Catholicism as opposed to evangelicalism gave me permission for myself to speak more directly to those themes without it feeling exactly on the nose, I guess.
Correct.
So,
yeah. And tell us about every character is like it symbolizes a different aspect of beliefs, and then starting with Wicks, there's a political aspect to him, and all the other characters have a different aspect of it.
Yeah, and I mean that's an approach I take to because that's one of the other big challenges of writing a movie like this is you have to create 6 to 8 suspects basically, and you have to make sure they each are very distinct. My approach to that always has been to, besides just it's not enough to make them physically distinct from each other, like this one's an author, this one's a cello player. My approach is always to think about what the central hub of what the story is about, the central theme, and give them each a different perspective on that theme, and that's what gives them a unique voice. And in this, it was especially vital because each one of them really does represent a fragment of my personal experience with faith. And so that means they're all going to have their own thing. That means it's all going to be related to the central theme. But most importantly, it means I'm going to be writing all of them, even the most despicable ones, starting from a place of empathy. Even the Psy character with his, terrible political rants and stuff. I mean, the thing is, when I was a teenager, I was in an evangelical household. I was fully that in the moment of, in the 80s and the rise of Reagan era politics. And so I was very politically conservative when I was in evangelical. And I'm the opposite of that now, but it's something that I can tap back into why it feels good to kind of stick your thumb in a wound, and kind of cause pain in that way. I know that because I've experienced that being a young man. So I don't know. I think it's important, even with the quote unquote despicable characters, that there's something, even if you don't like it in yourself, that you can look in and recognize. I
don't know enough about Agatha Christie, but were her mysteries always, relevant? And there was like in your films, there's an urgency, like you were dealing with capitalism with Glass Onion, and this one is religion. Was she also, timely?
Yes, and that's another thing that I think is a real misperception about Christie, is that because we've all grown up watching adaptations of her work, which are all usually period pieces set in quaint little villages, I think a lot of people have the misperception that's what her books are. But again, she never wrote a period piece. She was always writing to her present moment. It's not like she was an incredibly political writer, but she was always writing about the society that she was in. And there's a lot of in her books, there's kind of the young women who are smoking cigarettes and who are independent-minded was something that you see over and over in her books, and clashing with kind of the old guard. And she in her books in the in her books in the 20s, that's why there's always like Colonel so-and-so. It's because it's like the war veteran who's come back from the Great War and is kind of is trying to reintegrate into society. But even further in her career, her books that were written in the 1960s are set in the 1960s. So a bit of this was just trying to get back to that of, this is an incredibly potent genre to use to engage with a modern society, because you're building like a little power structure of suspects. You're really building a little microcosm of society with that. And so the idea of using that to actually talk about what's going on in the world today, that seemed important.
You've mentioned Benoit and Daniel Craig. Tell me about developing the character, whereas like I was really pleased to see that you don't spend time adding layers, discovering new things about him. He basically is there to serve the purpose to the story, as opposed to developing him as a character. Tell us about that approach. Yeah,
that's really important to me, especially as the series goes on. I never want to kind of burden the audience with like a Blanc backstory or any big long mythology about his character.
But other directors or writers will feel compelled to go that route.
Yeah, and some do it well. It's just my own personal preference is I want him to be revealed through his purpose in each mystery, which is solving the crime. But that is not just as plot based as it sounds, because really, in each mystery, Blanc is defined by his central relationship with the protagonist, with Anna de Armas's character in the first one, with Janelle Monáe's in the second, and with Josh O'Connor's in this. And so through that relationship, and I think in this movie, you can dig in quite a bit, and you can kind of, I think he has more of a personal journey in this one than he does in the other two, even. But it's always in the context of the case that's on the table and the relationship that he's forming with, with the, for lack of a better word, the main character.
Yeah. And you find out little things here and there, like he's a Phantom of the Opera fan.
Hey. Right what you know.
You just mentioned Anna de Armas and Janelle Monáe. Josh O'Connor takes over the baton for them, but this is a bigger role. He has more of a weight to carry than the other previous characters. Tell us about making him bigger, and where did that come from?
Well, I think part of it is just because of the theme of this movie, because of the notion of it all being an exploration of kind of the selfless, Christ-like motives he has coming up against different versions of, no, it has to be us against them, that kind of conflict. I think because of that, I mean, the main reason it probably feels the way that Josh is more present in this one, I'm not sure if he is more so than Anna, but it probably feels that way because that first act, Blanc doesn't enter until the end of the first act, which is a bit more of a traditional murder mystery structure. That's how it's usually kind of done, but this is the first movie where we do that. And that, for me, was just to kind of give Josh and his place with Wicks and his place with the congregation and his conflict, give it the space to kind of breathe and develop for the audience to really establish it and set the stage before Blanc enters. Because when Blanc enters, first of all, then Daniel Craig's in the movie, and he's coming in with his own perspective, and that's going to then that's going to define the rest of the film, how that works with Josh's character.
Yeah, in the past, you've mentioned that John Dixon is one of your favorite writers.
Yeah, John Dixon Carr, yeah.
And that he's known for the locked room mysteries, and you use a locked room mystery aspect. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so John Dixon Carr is an author that I discovered just a few years ago, and he's become one of my favorite mystery writers. He was a contemporary of Agatha Christie's. He was part of the golden age of detective fiction. He was American. He was one of ours, but he lived most of his life in England, and he kind of specialized in these locked room impossible crime mysteries, which is what we attempt in this. But more than that, he wrote in this delicious, almost Edgar Allan Poe Gothic tone, and he always kind of like veered towards ghost stories or the supernatural before always bringing it back at the last minute. And his writing is so rich and evocative, and he's just such a good writer. So I wanted to name check him in this just because so much of the DNA of this movie is drawn from me just kind of falling in love with his work.
And you do use the fact that the murder happens in that enclosed room, and we're wondering how it happened, which is that's he would use that in one of his mysteries. Not this particular, but you're inspired by that.
Yeah, that's largely what he did. I mean, and it's an interesting little. I'm sure there are some hardcore mystery fans in the crowd here. It's an interesting little cul-de-sac of the mystery genre, the impossible crime, and it's a tricky thing because on one hand it's so much fun, and Carr did it so well. But the other lesson I took from Carr is in his best books, he knows that. Kind of the problem with the locked door mystery is it's a bit like a card trick a little bit, in that the solution of it, no matter how ingenious it is always going to feel a bit like revealing how a card trick is done. It's always going to be a little bit of a because it's always going to do with some. I kind of make fun of it in the movie with some gadgets or some there's only so many solutions it can possibly be. But what Carr understood is that means you just have to make the ending satisfying on another level, which you should be doing anyway, but you have to remember that the reveal of how it's done or who done it is not the actual satisfying ending for an audience. Yeah, the only satisfying ending is a conclusion of the emotional arc you've been drawing from the beginning that has to do with your main characters and where they end up getting to.
Mm-hmm. And also the journey. I mean, I mentioned on the way right outside that, like, I mean, yeah, it is wonderful to find out who killed. Don't reveal who killed, by the way.
We're all cool. We're all cool.
You know, that's not the satisfying aspect of your films, finding out who did it. I actually don't even remember Glass Onion who did, but it's,
I don't either.
But it's the journey. You know, that's the delicious aspect. But that, regardless. Do you feel pressured to coming up with the perfect murder and?
Yeah, you want to get it right. You want to have that element of it be satisfying for the audience. But I do think, I mean, there's an element of it where I don't know. It's almost like, but this is also what's fun about it. I think the best detective stories or movies, it's not like they present a solvable puzzle to the audience. They present the illusion of a solvable puzzle in that all the pieces are there, but it's not like in any good detective novel you could actually put it all together. The writers of Ellery Queen had a great quote where they said, yeah, we play fair with the audience, provided the audience is the smartest genius that ever lived on Earth. And that's kind of the case where really the trick is just the satisfying mystery is it's a surprise at the end, and then either when you watch it a second time or you go and think back, you can see how everything was laid out, where it all adds up and feels satisfying. But it's not like the satisfying part is building something that you can guess or you don't. So,
yeah. Well, this year is the first time that the Oscars are handing out for best casting, and your casting is remarkable, and your casting director should be nominated. How difficult is it to put together? You throw the best parties. I mean, the guests in your films are incredible. How hard is it to put a cast like this together?
Yeah, it's a real, I mean, Mary Vernew and Brett Howe, who are our casting directors we worked with for many years, I mean, all of the hat tips to them. They really do incredible work, and it's a collaborative process, and but it's always, I mean, really we're doing something in these movies where we're going after movie stars who in any other movie would be #1 on the call sheet, you know, big head on the poster leading their own movies. And we're going after them to play suspects in a genuine ensemble. But I think what's nice about that, and I think this is the reason why we've had such wonderful experiences making all 3 of these movies with the cast, is any one of these actors who signs up for that, the only reason for them to say yes and do it is because they genuinely want to be part of an ensemble, and they genuinely love their fellow actors and want to show up and have a few months of this kind of summer stock theater experience. And that's really what happens. It's everyone shows up, just no one goes back to their trailers. Everyone just hangs out with each other in the green room in between takes, and there's a real spirit of egoless kind of joy and community with the actors, and it's I feel like I kind of just get to enjoy it.
Yeah. You when you were here for the first film, Don Johnson mentioned the green room, that you built the green room down in the basement where all the actors were hanging out all day and playing, and that he mentioned that created a sense of camaraderie and chemistry that you see on screen. So now you've continued doing the green room, and
yeah, it's almost like, you know, that video game The Sims, where you like build a Sim city and then see if it works. We kind of build this little green room, and then we just, and it's funny, all the actors kind of gravitate towards it, and just we're like, oh, it's working. Yeah.
So it does build a sense of. Do you have people that you wanted for this film? You don't have to name names, but you lost and you couldn't get or you always get your first choice.
No, it's the same as any casting process. Where, I mean, that's the flip side, is we're going after people who are the busiest people in the world. So it always feels like a little miracle when we get, you know, somebody's deal closed and we have them in the movie. But then, like any other casting process, you get to the end of it and you look at the group of people and you can't imagine anyone else in the parts, and it seems like it was, you know, a fait accompli.
Did you write a particular role in this film for the one person that's playing it, like Josh O'Connor?
No, I try not to do that, because I've learned that's a real pathway to heartbreak. Because if you get your heart set on someone and then they're not available, then also, and this is with any other genre as well, like I don't feel like that would really be fair to the actor, because unless I'm friends with them, that means I'm not writing thinking about them and their abilities. I'm writing thinking about another character they've played. So I find it's more fun to offer roles to people who I've never quite seen them do this before, but they're good enough. Like Andrew Scott, like I've never quite seen. He's not the first one that would have sprung to mind in terms of like a alpha male manosphere kind of egotistical sci-fi writer. But I was like, but I want to see what Andrew Scott's take on that is, and and also I want to hang out with Andrew Scott. So let's cast him.
Well, he can do no wrong, Andrew Scott. I don't know if you saw him do that one man, Vanya.
Oh no, I didn't get to see it. No, because I was working. Yeah, I was over in that. Yeah. No, I heard it was extraordinary. Yeah,
it's surreal. He played all the characters himself. Over 12 characters. It was amazing. Tell us about working with Josh O'Connor. I admire him. He blew me away in this.
Yeah, he's really something special. I feel so lucky we connected with that guy. So I hadn't been familiar with Josh's work. Daniel brought him to my attention, and Daniel had known him through Luca, who directed Challengers. And so I watched Challengers, and I it was my favorite movie of that year. And then he did a beautiful performance in a film called La Chimera. I watched that, and the opposite end of the emotional spectrum of Challengers, but equally as captivating. And I just thought, who is this guy? And then I sat down and met him, and he's suspiciously lovely. He's such a lovely human being. And
suspiciously lovely.
And I thought that's perfect for a movie like this. So
he's also terrific in Kelly Reichardt's new film.
I've seen it twice now. I mean, she's one of my favorite American filmmakers, and I think he's amazing in that movie. Yeah.
So are you working on the next one, or you're taking a break until?
Well, I have another thing. I'm writing my next thing right now, and it's not one of these. I have another story that is just a different thing that I want to do next. But I feel it's not because I feel burnt out on these. After this one, I actually feel energized about making these movies, and I hope that whether it's the next one after that or down the line, I hope if I can come back and make one of these occasionally for the rest of my life, I'd be a happy man. Yeah.
Please, we will be happy. Yeah, you're always a joy. Please come back. This is your home.
Thank you for having me, and guys, thank you for coming again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.